the last 10 years will be the first time in human history where humans have been more interested in deleting their history than creating history, which I think is quite fun. Okay, so in terms of what I want to show you guys today, the nature of the battlefield has changed. So we've seen a lot of things in the press recently. TalkTalk is a prime example, Ashley Madison, everything that we see around ISIS tends to have some kind of cyber element to it as well nowadays. I just want to take a look at that in a bit more detail. And the best way to do that is to also look at the past as well, because one thing that we've been quite used to seeing in our lifetimes, in our parents' lifetimes, is a very normal idea of warfare. It's all about who has the most resources, the most money, who has the biggest whatever, who can make the biggest explosion and cause the biggest amount of destruction. And that's changed. That's changed fundamentally. We still see elements of this. But really what tends to take place now is something a little bit more underground, slightly a little bit more scary, something that almost invades your home. And we're talking about cyber attacks now. And I think the first time that I thought the press really started to talk about this was when we saw the Charlie Hebdo attacks. So we all saw this on the news as being a massacre, or a number of journalists put on the media, put out on the television. But something else took place. And I want to show you a video that I took offline, I took actually from YouTube, just to kind of show you what happened afterwards.
Thursday, VSEC Le Monde lost control of all of its 11 channels. Its website and Facebook page were also taken over by hackers claiming to be members of the Islamic State group. It started on our Twitter account. We saw it being hacked right before our eyes. And then it spread across all of our social network accounts. And at the same time, our TV broadcast was taken down.
This is a major television channel that happened to lose all of its outlet, social media, television. Social media, television, their websites all taken offline for a small period of time. That's quite scary. Can you imagine? I mean, sometimes we can't relate to this because it's a foreign outlet. Could you imagine if the BBC News was taken offline? That's quite a big deal. You'd expect them to have better security than that. And it wasn't just TV5 Monde. If you look at this in a bit more detail, there's some interesting stats that came out of this. I think it was interesting to put a guy with a gun on the door as well with a cyber attack. But 19,000 subsequent cyber attacks against French companies after the Charlie Hebdo attacks. The reason why we think this came about was because Anonymous actually went online and said they're going to shut down the ISIS social media accounts, they're going to take all their sites offline in retaliation for Charlie Hebdo. And what actually happened was the online ISIS, the cyber caliphate, came back and said, well, we've got more than you. So we saw 19,000 subsequent cyber attacks. Everything from military regiments, which is kind of what you expect them to target, right? Something that represents the French government, because this is effectively led from a political motive, down to pizza takeaways. French pizza takeaways. Going over France got taken offline. That's just crazy. Gardening websites. People who had just opened up a website that just happened to be in the French language. It was a personal website, maybe pictures of their family, taken like that, being taken offline. This is different to what we're used to. What we're used to as individuals is saying, two governments fighting each other, I don't really have to have much involvement in this. And that's easy to kind of turn a blind eye to it. But now what we're seeing is targeting based on just your location. Some kind of an affiliation of your organisation exists in a certain country, that you happen to carry a certain language, that you sell a food type they don't agree with. You're actually being targeted for slightly different reasons now, not your allegiance to a war or some kind of warring party. The head of cyber attacks for the French military actually said that this is the first time the country has been faced with such a large wave of cyber attacks. Now the US has 40 times as many websites as France, statistically, but this is the largest wave of cybercrime ever to hit any country. That's quite staggering. So we saw all kinds of things being taken offline. Now it's great to just tell you what happened, but I'm a techie, so I had to go and find out how they did it. And the honest truth is, we don't specifically know how they did it, but we did get a clue a couple of days afterwards as to a way we could possibly do it ourselves. When there was an interview taking place with this chap, completely unrelated. I don't even know what they were interviewing for. This interview was taken in the offices of TV5 Monde. And just hanging up behind him in the corner right there. You can't see this on the screen because it's not a great resolution, but there's something hanging up there. Does anybody know what that is? Does anyone follow this? That up there says the YouTube and then this. Do we have anyone who can read French in the room? What does that say?
Password of YouTube.
Password for YouTube. Their password for their YouTube account is password for YouTube. And it's hanging up on the screen, and that's been displayed not just across France. TV Saint-Monde is international. That's been displayed up there. So if they make that mistake after the attack, what will they do before the attack? And the other thing as well to take from this is, I mean, let's analyse this in terms of behaviour. People put in passwords on post-it notes. It's irritating for any IT admin. But it's an individual person doing that. It's a choice that person's making to break that policy. That is an A3 sheet of paper that someone's gone to a lot of trouble to stick up on the ceiling for everybody to see. That's bad policy. That's really bad policy. Managers are walking past that. IT admins are walking past that. Security admins are probably walking past that. And they think that's a legitimate way to run the organisation's IT systems. So of course they get a nice Facebook like for that. So that's how we think they did. That's how we think they got it. Just so you know as well, we can't see it, but there's also Instagram just there at the bottom, and we believe the one at the top is Twitter. So we can, presumably with a high enough resolution, get access to all of those systems. We don't know if TV Saint-Monde will change those passwords yet. So, you know, cyber attacks have changed. Cyber warfare has changed. It used to be organisation versus organisation, government versus government. What we actually see now is people that are loosely affiliated. All of these people that claim to be a part of Cyber Caliphate, ISIS Online, generally are not present with that organisation in Syria and Iraq. They're not there, they're sympathisers. We saw the attack on TalkTalk. It was distributed between a guy in London, a teenager in Northern Ireland, and whoever is about to be arrested subsequently after that. These people have probably never met each other. They probably just chatted on Skype, MSN. There's even a Tor chat now, which is very cryptic, which we're at the end of the day. Quite scary. But what we're seeing now is this loose collection. We don't know if ISIS sanctioned this attack, but somebody did it and then they flew the banner for them. It's almost like they have these warriors sitting around waiting for some kind of desire to want to take something down. So the nature of warfare has changed online in a big way. But it's not just individuals. We also see government versus government in a big way too. This summer, we saw the release of the F-35B Lightning Mark II, and you would have seen some of this in Alex's presentation. I've taken it a little bit further. It was manufactured by Lockheed Martin. It's been developed over the last 10 years. It was a heavily guarded secret until its test flight. Major features, pretty cool, vertical landing. So we've got something that kind of replicates the Harrier jump jet in some ways. And hidden guns in the wings. So this actually opens up. I saw a video of it, check it out on YouTube. Shoots, so remains aerodynamic, but also has the weapons capability that they need. And the US military were very, very proud of this, extremely proud. In fact, so proud that they spent, for some reason Alex and I differ on the value, but I'll go and check out why. But I believe that it's 40 billion that's been spent on the R&D for this particular project. Most of it being contributed by governments. Lockheed Martin develop it, but the research is being done by, the research budget is being contributed by governments. The UK, by the way, is the biggest third-party government from the US to actually contribute to this. We contribute $4 billion to this. And the reason why we do that is because when they're released, we get a discount on buying some of those planes. So there's also a stake from other countries around the world. Italy has put money into this. Norway has put money into this. I believe Germany as well put money into this too. This is actually on Wikipedia if you want to check this out. So there's a lot of investment from foreign countries into the development of this jet. Looks very nice. But then we saw something else happen. This test flight took place. Shenyang JC-31. And that plane looks remarkably similar. For something that was kept under wraps for 10 years, for something that was given that level of budget, where did this come from? And how is it that this was only test flight 3 months after this one? Now we smell a rat here. And the US military does as well. And they think it's the Chinese. That's the answer, basically. And why do we know that? Because they haven't said that publicly. We know that because Edward Snowden gave a document to Der Spiegel, which basically said that the US administration believes that this jet's blueprints have been stolen in order to create the Shen. How? How? Surely the defense is abandoned that. Surely they are. happening, right? Well, the manufacturer is the problem here. In May 2011, Lockheed Martin was breached. They only admitted it afterwards, about 2 or 3 years afterwards, by an unknown source, quotation marks there, because they can't prove it. And the way that it was done was external malicious actors gained access through their VPN services. Now, you think there's an easy way to protect that, right? One is take away the privilege of certain users, and also have something like two-factor authentication on their external access. Don't just have username and password. Well, the interesting thing is they did. They actually did. And they obviously suspect the Chinese. So if they did have 2FA, and they did have privilege control, and they did have good username and passwords, what happened? 2 things happened. And this is very indicative of today's cyber attacks, multi-pronged attacks. The first one is spear phishing. We know that emails were sent into Lockheed Martin staff with a list of available positions for people to move vertically in the business, and they sent it to people that were looking for position changes. Open this spreadsheet and have a look at all the positions that are available. There's nothing in it but a macro that exploited a hole in Flash. So they took their username and passwords, and they took the privileges that they had as well. But the second part of what they did was quite interesting. Does anybody know what happened, or what was kind of mentioned in the press a month before May 2011? RSA, right? We strenuously denied this in 2011. No, not us. It's not us. We don't even have a cybercrime yet. We don't even do that stuff. Well, this summer, China told us they do. They actually do. There was a report released by Mandiant, 2012 I think it was, a 100-page report, talking about Unit 61398. They even pinpointed them on Google Maps and said they're in here. CNN drove cars up there with cameras in. You can watch this footage on YouTube, and as you're driving past what just looks like an apartment building, suddenly Chinese military come running out, telling you to stop your car and turn the camera off. Just an apartment building, right? They admitted these guys exist. This is a picture of them. That's their logo. And pretty much what they do, there's a description. They have a 3 kind of tier description as to what they do. But they are there to defend and potentially attack based on corporate requirements, security of the homeland, and anything else that's deemed important to Chinese national security. So everything that's in that phrase and those 3 items can be used for development of that fighter jet. So we believe, Edward Snowden believes, the US military believes, that the Chinese have taken those plans in order to develop that plane. Who knows, right? But we're kind of used to hearing that. Nations that, I don't know, we don't consider maybe totally friendly, attacking those that we do consider friendly. But that's not the only scenario that we see this happening. We also see allied nations attacking allied nations, which is even scarier when you think about it. This is an image from G5+1 back in April. If you remember this on the news, this was a conference which included Iran, and it was there to try and remove some of the sanctions on Iran in exchange for some openness in their nuclear plans, having things like inspections into their plants, stuff like that. And to some degree it was a success from a political point of view. But something else took place here. When Kaspersky was looking at the servers and the critical infrastructure of the events and the hotels that were servicing that group, that meeting, they found in every single location an instance of something that was termed Duku version 2. Every single one. And so Mantech confirmed this as well. They called it the most sophisticated malware ever discovered. And if you were in the presentation previous, you'll know that Lloyd actually showed you a diagram of kind of some of the malware that's been released over the years versus the sophistication. And you saw that Duku version 2 was actually at the top in sophistication and most recent. Basically what it does, for anyone that's technical, yes it is, was they used the same technique. They had an MS Word document which had some kind of code in it, which would then jump out into the kernel of the machine. Now, if you're not technical, that's the layer that sits between the hardware and the operating system. So your AV scanners are scanning the operating system. If it sits on the kernel, you've got a bigger problem. You're not going to find it quite often. And so that's where they put it. And all this thing did was just collect information. Just collected information, pushed it off somewhere, didn't ever do anything malicious, no ransomware, no deleting, no worm activity, no taking things offline. Why is it called Duck version 2? Well, because it's a variant of Stuxnet. Okay, this is all starting to come together now, I promise. Stuxnet was famous for being on Iran's centrifuge factories and plants. It was a virus that was found in there that was used to heat up those power plants to such a degree that the centrifuges would melt down, so they couldn't use them anymore. And we know who created Stuxnet. It was created by the US military and the Israeli military. We know that because the US have finally admitted it. But this is a variant of Duck. This is a variant. It's got the same code in it, but it doesn't do the heating up, it doesn't do the control element, it just does the spying piece. The US were present at that meeting. Well, they got to spy. They're going to be in all the meetings. They get to talk to everybody. The only people that were not in that meeting were the Israelis. And they have an area of interest in what's taking place in those meetings. That is a country next to them that openly wants to remove them from the face of the planet. And they had no access to it, and so their only option is to spy on their allies and send in code that can do that for them. So the Israelis haven't actually admitted to this. They said, no, it's not us, it's not us. But, interestingly, in August, the US military publicly accused Israel of spying on it and its meetings subsequent to that using the Duck version 2 models. You make your own mind up on that. Now, why have I been giving you these particular examples? Obviously we're here at an event today with vendors and resellers, and ultimately we're here to secure our customers and give them solutions that make them more secure, prevent these types of attacks. Why am I talking about governments and ISIS? What relevance does that have to us? Well, I think the most striking thing about all these cases is despite who the two actors are, the one that always seems to be caught in the middle is the private company. So all of the event planners, all of the hotels, Lockheed Martin, the pizza takeaway shops that got taken offline, these are all private organisations that have been attacked as a result of two organisations not agreeing on something or wanting to take each other down. And that is what's changed in a huge way in the modern world. What we now see is the blending of control around corporate and government. Sony got hacked and North Korea got accused by the president of the US. How does that work? Where's his jurisdiction over Sony? Is Sony even an American company? I'm not sure. I thought they were Japanese. But that's what we're kind of seeing. So looking at all of these examples, and me being a consultant and wanting to always find a solution to everything, which involves a lot of people, there's three items in security that I think reduces everybody's risk surface. And we actually came to this conclusion on a webinar that I was on 5-6 weeks ago, possibly, with Amar Singh, funny enough, and a chap called Ken Munro from Pentest Farmers. He couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but a very, very knowledgeable man. You would have seen him at IP Expo and InfoSec, talking about IoT quite often, hacking things like wireless kettles, fridges. He even hacked you can get these dolls now which can speak, and you can connect them to Wi-Fi, and he was able to hack into it and get it to not only say the things that we kind of all want to try and make it say, but also actually say the Wi-Fi password as well. And we, as a three, came to the same conclusion. There's three items that you can pay attention to in your organisation just to remove a lot of the risk. And that is passwords, strong passwords, and two-factor authentication, privilege, okay, and patching. And I think in all four of these examples of private organisations that I've mentioned here, we have seen an example of failing on that part. TV St. Monde clearly has a massive issue around passwords. I don't even want to know what their domain handle password is. Lockheed Martin, it wasn't so much their fault, but when somebody got access into that solution, that person had a high enough level of privilege to go and steal arguably their most valuable asset. RSA, they're a security company, right? Patching. They were taken down by a phishing email that exploited a hole in their network in the Adobe product, patching. And finally, I know it's not the UN, but this was the best logo I could get for G5+1. Not so much G5+1, but all those organisations which have remained anonymous. Again, privilege is an issue there. How is it that I can get access into your system and then somehow get access to all of these things that people are talking about? And of course, patching as well. Don't forget, Duck.io exploits a vulnerability. That's what it basically does. So in all these cases, there's 3 items that we can increase our security via and potentially thwart these attacks. TV Saint-Monde would not have been taken offline with password management. Lockheed Martin, if they got a better 2FA solution, they would be in a better position than that. RSA patching and also G5+1 too. Now, I vowed not to talk about specific products today, but we do have vendors in today's event which actually supply solutions that help with all of these problems. And we even have one vendor here that does all 3 in the same solution set. And if you want to talk about that particular solution set, the man in the corner over there, Mike Ty, will be able to help you with that. So go chase him around the event. I'm sure he'll join you in that too. But yeah, these are the 3 items that we can pay the most attention to. Now, I wanted to also kind of speak about where this is going, because it's really easy for the news to scare us all the time. It's really easy for us to think the world is inevitably about to collapse, and you know, we're all going to descend into caveman-like state because the whole IT and the internet's going to disappear in front of our eyes. And I want to show you a particular video that I guess kind of goes to that in some ways. And this is from Obama. He every year goes to a US military out kind of Fort Meade. He's at in this particular case, I think a base or a naval dockyard or something like that. And he answers questions that the troops give to him on camera. And this was September of this year. And one of the troops asked him about his upcoming visit from the Chinese president, and if he was going to have any discussions around things like the theft of IP. And this is what he said. This is what he says in a minute.
President Xi of China, a state visit here coming up in a couple of weeks. We've made very clear to the Chinese that there's certain practices that they're engaging in that we know are emanating from China and are not acceptable. And you know, we can choose to make this an area of competition, which I guarantee you we'll win if we have to. Or alternatively, we can come to an agreement in which we say, this isn't helping anybody. Let's instead try to have some basic rules of the road in terms of how we operate.
21st century arms race, potentially. Let's hope that he chooses option 2. Thank you very much for your time today. Please enjoy the event.